Hello, this is Rabbi with ndftraining.com, and today we're going to be looking at an affordable 1:6 LPVO. Now, you might have seen in a post that I recently put out, there's a difference in my opinion in regards to the word being used as affordable versus cheap. Something that's affordable could often be very good quality, is just found at a very good price, while something that is cheap could still be something that's very expensive, but the quality is going to be significantly lacking. This, in my opinion, is going to be in the category of affordable. It is not the highest quality optic that's out there, but I really want to stress the main point before I get into all the details of this product and all the pros and cons of this product. We really need to be able to understand a baseline of what we're expecting out of this optic. So to give you an idea, this optic cost $100. So we're not comparing it to obviously the premier, the higher end optics that are out there, but there's definitely a place in the market for something at this price, while not something that's going to be overly tactical, overly cool, overly intense with every single feature that you might find. However, for a price of a $100 optic, this is a very feature-rich optic that I think is very valuable for a lot of people, and is definitely a step up from some of the very lower end cheap optics that you might find on Amazon or other places like that. So we're going to do a kind of a deep dive into this optic. I'll give you my initial impressions on it. I haven't had a huge amount of time behind this optic, but in regards to initial use and how it functioned, I think it's very cool, and it might be something worthwhile for some of you guys to check out if you have a few different uppers, if you want kind of a recreational build, similar to this recce build that I just put out a video on that you could check out as well. And it just gives you an idea in regards to not needing to spend $1,000, $3,000 on an optic if you're going to just kind of use it recreationally and have a good time. So this is definitely, I think, one of those optics that will fit into that category, and we're just going to jump right into it. So I have a few different notes here that I'm going to keep referencing to make sure that I cover everything. I definitely took a lot of notes when it came to the use of this optic, because I really wanted to make sure to give as well-rounded as an opinion, just again as an initial impressions. Over time, I might see things that will wear or not be functional for as long, but we'll get there when we get there, and we'll see how it functions up till that point. So kind of as a general overview, this is a 30 millimeter tube, and it does have a 1:6 option. It comes with moderately good glass. I'm going to speak about that a little bit more in the future. It comes with good turrets, a decent mounting system. Again, these are all things I'm going to cover a little bit more. But again, for the $100 price tag, it's a pretty feature-rich optic that I think is worth taking a look into. So the mount that they sent me is one of their low mounts. I don't know if it's really going to be considered a low mount. I believe it's just like around 1.1 inches in height. So for me, on an AR platform, that was definitely too low. And I'm going to roll in some clips in the video right now. I'm generally very against and usually get very annoyed when I see like long-range shooting guys take off their eye protection when they're using their guns, and I agree with that, meaning I think that's an issue. But during the course of this review, it was somewhat difficult to be able to get that low for this optic. So it ended up being that I did take off my glasses to be able to wiggle around my head for the eye box to be able to get a proper sight picture when I was using it. So my only real criticism that's going to be coming out of this is going to be about the mount, but that's a very simple fix. There's a lot of available 30 millimeter mounts that are available on the market that you can be able to switch it out for. So I just didn't have a particular liking to this one, but still, if you're going to be mounting on a bolt gun or something along those lines, this mount will probably work perfectly fine. This is very similar to actually a Vortex mount that I use that is very affordable and very cheap as well. It has a very similar construction. It's made out of good material, so I don't really see it as an issue long-term running. Again, if this is not going to be an optic that you're going to be using on a very premier expensive setup, this is just kind of recreational use. So for what it is mounting wise, I think it was perfectly fine. It was perfectly sufficient. The front of the mount that I pointed out of here is actually on the main rail, which is again something I'm not usually okay with. I like being able to mount it further back or just to be on the main portion of the upper receiver. So again, going further up, it gives me a little bit of worry if there's any movement or shift in that area. It will affect the zero of the optic. So again, not something that's a huge deal, because there are plenty of like Cavalier mounts and other available mounts on the market that you could choose to be able to switch it out for different variants. So again, mount wise specifically, not a huge fan, but again, it works perfectly fine. The only downside that I had with it was it being mounted a little bit too low. Also, I'm now more comfortable with the 193 mounts that are very popular now, and I've really come to like them a lot more. So if I were to be switching anything, that would really be the only main switch I would have for this setup. Something else that I found very interesting is that it's very common to have quarter MOA adjustments or quarter mil adjustments when it comes to zeroing your optic. This actually comes in 1/5, so it's a little bit more precise than you might be usually used to. The only thing that I'll say about that is, generally speaking, if you have a 1:6 optic and you're going to be zeroing it at 100 yards, which is usually what's recommended, I don't think you'll notice a significant difference, just because even for myself personally, I'm not usually getting like perfectly touching rounds to each other when I'm shooting like that. It also depends obviously on the ammunition you're choosing and the the quality of the glass you're going to be using. So going from from quarter to 1/5, I don't know if it's going to make a huge difference for you, but it is actually pretty cool that it comes in 1/5 adjustments. This specific optic is in mil. I do believe that they have options in MOA, but this is the one that was sent out to me to be able to check out. It was in mil adjustments, so that's just really a preference thing. But in regards to it being able to hold zero and everything like that, it definitely works fine. Something that I also find that's very cool is that the turrets are kind of locking, so you lift it up to be able to adjust it, then push it back down. I really like that feature when it comes to LPVOs or scopes in general, just because it's still exposed and able to be adjusted while you're not really worried about it being bumped and then accidentally moved. So it definitely works fine for me. So it's a little bit smushy in regards to being able to feel it. You might be able to hear the clicks. So when I turned it back, you probably didn't hear that. It's a little bit smushy going back and a little bit smushy going forward, but it still works fine, and I was able to be very clear in regards to where I was impacting. And then throughout the day that I was firing it, it definitely held zero and I didn't have any problems with that. We'll see what happens long term, but in regards for that day of shooting and then being able to mess around with it, I definitely didn't have any issues there. On the left side of the optic, there's going to be a adjustment to be able to have a illuminated reticle. The reticle on the inside of this optic is actually very, very nice. I didn't get to be able to go as far as I wanted in regards to being able to test the BDC that it might have included, as well as the windage adjustments. A lot of people might be a little bit scared about the very full reticle that it has, but once you get to learn how to use it, it's actually very interesting. It's very straightforward, and it does have a lot of value in regards to being able to put something like that together, and it gives you a lot of options in regards to measuring wind and distance and drop, and I think it works very well. The best part about it is that being that it's a 1:6 option, if you are on the one magnification, that horseshoe reticle, which is also very popular, gives you a very quick ability to have good target acquisition and being able to use it kind of as like a red dot, especially when it's illuminated. So on the illumination side, it gives you options between red and green color. I don't really have a preference for that, and I don't really generally like that. I do prefer that if it had an option of, even if it was less options in regards to brightness, but have an offsetting in between, so that way I could choose when I would want to be able to use it and kind of have that. Because right now the way it's set up is that you have to either be on a setting that you choose or all the way off. So if this was going to be a rushed kind of thing where you have to choose between going all the way, you'll just have to keep moving until you get comfortable, versus like on the Vortex Viper PST, it has a stop between each individual illumination setting, so you could choose between what you'd most conventionally be using in regards to brightness, and that's definitely something I prefer. But what they went with is the green and red option, and I believe there's around 5 illumination settings for each. I didn't really get to use that, and it did seem somewhat dim, but generally for myself as well, the etched reticle that's on the inside is going to be primarily what I'd be using, unless it's kind of like a dusk option where it's kind of getting just low light enough that it would be beneficial to have it. So it's not usually on the bigger variables when it comes to what I would use. Going back from there, the adjustments to move from 1 to 6 is very, very smooth. This is probably of the smoothest that I've tried, and it works very, very nicely. It did actually come with a throw lever that you're able to screw in to be able to move it even faster. I am not using that right now, only because one of the things that I found odd, this seems to be going the opposite direction of what you'd conventionally see. So generally speaking, right now I'm at the 6 magnification. To be able to go to 1 magnification, you're going to go clockwise, and to go to 6, you're going to go counterclockwise. So for me personally, I prefer to go the opposite way, because generally I'll be more maybe on the 1x magnification. I don't want to just kind of hit it up to go to 6. So this is going the opposite direction. The other thing is that based on the video I made also last time, I do have a offset red dot that I made a video on as well that you can really check out. Really, really cool to have an offset red dot like this. Is that the throw lever that was there knocks right into it. So really I'd have to move the red dot, but since this is already going to be further up than what I'd like in regards to the mounting option of it, again, that's an easy fix. I'm still kind of stuck to having that here, but the fact that it did come with a throw lever included in the kit is very cool. It did also come with scope caps, which I generally don't use on LPVOs. I'll definitely use it on my scopes, so not really on my LPVOs, but it is something that's included as well inside the kit. In the back, you have an adjustable eyepiece that will be really able to fine tune it to your eye. There's quite a lot of distance in regards to how far you're able to adjust it. It goes really, really, really far out, and then again, goes really, really far in. So you definitely have a lot of adjustment there in regards to it being able to be really fine tuned to your eye. So I definitely didn't have any issues. Going back to glass clarity, this is a $100 optic. You're not going to get the most premium glass quality out of it. However, it was perfectly sufficient. I was shooting at 150 yards, not a huge distance, but it was no issue in regards to being able to impact the steel and be able to identify the steel from long distances and being able to even see lettering that I might have put on it. Again, it's a 1:6, so that goes in regards to magnification, but in regards to glass clarity, it's not perfect, but it's not bad. It's really, really, really not bad. The only other downside I've noticed in regards to the glass is, I'll try to roll in a clip right now. When I was moving my head around, or I'll try to move around the camera, there was sometimes kind of like almost like a white film, or a kind of like a fuzzy film that I was able to see. That might have been from the lighting, so meaning maybe adding a sunshade will have removed that. But that was something I noticed also, that you might have seen me adjust my head, or between shots after recoil, having to move my head slightly just to kind of lose that to get back to the regular glass clarity. Again, other than that, as initial impressions, I was actually very, very thoroughly impressed with this. For $100, again, on a few different rifles that you might have, you're not going to be spending $800-900 per optic that you're going to be getting. At least not most of us won't be doing that. So if that's something you're able to do, that's awesome. But generally speaking, if you have multiple rifle setups and you want something just for good old recreational use, and you're not really worried about too much of the durability side, this might be very much worthwhile as an option to be able to look into. That is definitely a step up from kind of the other really thrown away kind of optics you might find on Amazon. There's a lot of very cheap optics on Amazon, so you really want to be able to be careful to sort through what works best for you. But again, as initial impressions, if you have any questions, like, feel free to leave it below. I'd love to be able to do more testing on this and also try it out on different platforms to see really how it runs. But so far, my initial impressions they're pretty good. Again, the only annoyance I had is regards to the mount height, but again, that's not bad in regards to the other criticisms I could have had with this setup. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to leave it in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. This is Reticle Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.